So, let's talk about domestic spying. Let's get things straight. Those of us who paid attention knew we were being spied on. Starting with retroactive immunity for US telecom companies in 2008, immunity granted to an industry that had not yet even been charged with any crimes. 2 years earlier in 2006, leaks showed the US government was illegally tapping fiber backbone connections at AT&T. Many companies were issued national security letters with gag orders attached, stating even consulting an attorney about the order would be illegal. In 2004, Nicholas Merrill, the founder of an internet service provider, was issued one of these national security letters, which were not reviewed by any judge or court. He became the first to file a challenge to the legality of these letters in a lawsuit filed with the help of the American Civil Liberties Union. Merrill never did comply with the request, and eventually the request was dropped by the FBI. But the gag order in place still prevents Merrill from discussing specific details of the request. In many court documents, the case is still referred to as John Doe versus Ashcroft or Gonzalez, the attorney generals who served during the case. Reports were continuing to arise that American journalists were being spied on while overseas. We all knew we were being watched.
Well, I just assume everything's logged anyway.
Okay.
But the reality of the Snowden leaks shows the situation was much worse than many security experts were expecting. The NSA is building a massive data center in Utah that some estimate will consume enough energy to power 65,000 homes and require 1.5 million gallons of water for cooling. Although the capacity of the data center is classified, former NSA technical director and whistleblower William Binney estimates the capacity to be in the range of 5 zettabytes. According to the Snowden leaks concerning Prism, anyone using Microsoft, Google, Facebook, Yahoo, or Apple services most likely has their email and instant messages indexed with NSA search engines. This means the US government can now watch for trends on a global scale. Even if individual spying and privacy are not a concern for you, the far-reaching implication is that world governments have the ability to track the entire population's reaction to news events and gauge the effects of news and propaganda. Germany was found to be accepting tools from the NSA to spy on its citizens. This isn't something limited to China or Russia anymore. The Five Eyes, the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, have all been shown by the Snowden leaks to share information they gather from other citizens. It should be evident to people that the enemies that are being profiled are not the oil-producing states demonized by Western media, nor are the enemies the low-income nations that continue to face terrorism from US Predator drone attacks, nor are the South American countries that are tired of America funneling guns and money to their borders, while profiting from a drug trade run by the CIA.
I will tell you, Director Deutsch, as a former Los Angeles police narcotics detective, that the agency has dealt drugs throughout this country for a long time.
Many of these countries' entire budgets pale in comparison to America's spending just on defense. That the true enemy of high-income countries are their own citizens. In the 1960s and 70s, large numbers of people began to protest for civil rights and against the war in Vietnam. Since then, we've demonized the entire generation of baby boomers as being entitled, LSD-tripping, pot-smoking hippies who didn't want to be conscripted to serve in the military, ignoring the fact that many of the protesters were university students who could obtain exemptions and deferments for the draft. They were protesting because they were seeing their friends who had chosen not to go to college being conscripted into a war that served no purpose. People were waking up around the world and collectively saw the evils that world governments and industry would allow in order to maintain their standard of living. Our current leaders grew up out of that generation, and they truly believe the atrocities they commit against the poor of this world is justified in preventing a recourse of the awakening of the 1960s and 1970s. The United States has been found militarizing its own police forces. The Occupy movement was portrayed by the US media as being without purpose. But protesters were members of the working class, or students with mountains of debt in a world with few jobs. They had a goal, a simple one, to hold bankers who had defrauded America in the 2007-2008 financial crisis for their crimes, and to prosecute them instead of using police forces to continue foreclosing on the homes of the poor. People who lost their homes are often belittled as well, even though in many cases they were clearly the victims of fraud. What the Occupy movement wanted was what happened in Iceland. The Icelandic financial crisis protests in 2009 went mostly unreported by mainstream international media, yet this peaceful revolution led to the resignation of the current government, a national referenda where the people rejected using government funds to pay Icelandic bank debts, an indictment of their prime minister, and the formation of a council to write a new constitution for the country. So many groups use social media to promote their own agendas, arrange protests, and organize community action. Social media is often cited as contributing to the Arab Spring, often overshadowing the cables released by whistleblower Private Bradley Manning of the US Army to WikiLeaks. Cables that show the influence of the United States in Northern Africa, also cited by many as being the leading contributor to the Arab Spring. What the international media hasn't been showing us are what Egyptians are saying during the 2013 protests in Cairo, showing that they are aware of US meddling in their politics and attempting to install leadership that benefits the interests of global powers over that of the Egyptian people. I have suggested to people that the United States and possibly other world powers may have used social media to either cause the unrest in the Arab Spring or use it to push natural uprisings in a particular direction. Many people I've talked to believe this either didn't happen or isn't possible.
September 11, 1973. The democratically elected president of Chile, Salvador Allende, died in the palace as he was overthrown in a bloody CIA-backed military coup led by General Augusto Pinochet, who then reigned for 17 years, overseeing the killing of more than 3,000 Chileans until 1990. The coup backed by then President Richard Nixon and Secretary of State National Security Advisor Henry Kissinger.
This was the year that the U.S. overthrew Iran's democracy and installed the Shah, a pro-U.S. dictator.
Very recently, what happened in Venezuela. In 1998, Hugo Chavez gets elected president, following a long line of presidents who had been very corrupt and basically destroyed the economy of the country. And Chavez was elected amidst all that. Chavez stood up to the United States. So in 2002, a coup was staged, which there's no question in my mind, and most other people's minds, that the CIA was behind that coup.
The reality is, not only is it possible, it's been happening for decades. And the Arab Spring, like a serial killer's modus operandi, fits the pattern. It should be no surprise if in 30 to 40 years, documents are released proving the U.S. involvement in the current unrest in Muslim nations. We are being spied on. People are waking up. The internet was originally meant to be a distributed network of computers immune to suppression of freedom of speech by its resilience and elasticity. But now the internet is dominated by megasites, many based in the United States and Europe, which could be tapped and influenced by world governments to push the global narrative into a single direction. Large international spy networks should be a great concern to everyone, because they have the potential to allow both governments and the industries that back them to monitor trends on a very large scale and see just how far they can push their citizens without losing control.